Okay, so here's a video that's going to be loaded down with reinstallation of wing window and window information, as well as how to adjust the placement of the glass. As I've hung the doors and gotten the gaps really where I want them, I realized that the glass was completely not aligned the way I wanted it to, so that when the rear window went up, then the door window went up. It was just the gap was all wrong. So I had to tear things back apart. And I put in the rubber seal so that I could really get a handle on where the glass needs to sit. That's in here. But anyway, so let me step back a second. We've got some video already on how to take apart and restore the regulators for the door. And if you're at the point where you've got the door back together with the latch rod and the regulators in, this addresses the vent windows. I had to have these arms re-chromed, while this surface frequently will have some slight pitting, which is no big deal because you just don't see it when the car is with the door closed. The outside of that finish was pitted pretty bad, so I had those re-chromed. So there's been quite the delay on getting all this back together. So new rubber seals all the way around, and this these wing windows have a long arm on them, which also is the support for the glass, the main glass. And the only way that goes in is through this opening over by the lock-unlock rod. And so this large opening allows for the bottom of the bracket of the vent window to go in. And so the glass has to be out, and the regulators can be in, but the glass has to be out. You set the wing window assembly in, and as soon as you get to this large opening, there are these adjustable threaded brackets. And one of them, sorry for the horrendous camera work, one of them is this lower one here. And as you see, I had marked the setback on it, and I realized when I was taking it apart that that really doesn't matter because you have to readjust it anyway. The protrusion from the bracket to the bottom of that washer was 11/16, but again, you have to readjust it, and especially after all the door adjustment. So that's on there. And just to kind of illustrate it, this is the nut, and this is a threaded rod about 2 inches long, and it has a washer on the back side of it, and it goes into the body. And that little puppy has to go on in this opening. So you get the vent window through there. Oh, and when you remove the window, this track has to be out. So glass out, track out on this side. Then the vent window can go in. As soon as you get to the big opening, you put on the bottom bracket or bottom threaded rod that has the washer backing on it. And then that can drop down, and then you bring the vent window over, and when you get the vent window to this little square, the bottom part of the cast polish part, you go ahead and put this puppy on, and you shoot it in beyond what you think you need, because you can't even get it to this hole without it being in quite a bit. So then you get it in. You've got those threaded studs coming out here and on the bottom here. You go ahead and attach this. This little bracket slips is against the vent window. Then set this next bolt in. This holds the door card on, so it's critical. You do not have to put it on now. I don't want to lose them, so I try to put stuff back together so it's on there. And then let the adjustment begin. What I found was that this little gap here between the sheet metal and the polished part that's about right. And what that does is that gave me a kind of a starting point for the elevation, because the outside seal has to sit here against the door body, and that, let's get my hand out of the way, and that you could set that too low, you could set it too high, and that's about right. So that gap, like I said over here, gave me a reference point. Then you've got to align the chrome and everything with the door opening. And again, it does help to have the seal in. So that is very adjustable. It can go up, it can go back a little bit, it can go forward. But again, that alignment seems to work really well for me. Okay, so the vent window's in. I'm not too worried about the adjustments of this yet. These will control the tilt of the frame so that it matches the frame, the tilt of the car. You can put a little more pressure on that or a little less depending on how much you want it up against the seal. And I just kind of went moderate. And then these little guys, once that's adjusted, this goes on there and torques on. As you can see from my original paint job, I had done some witness painting so that I could get really close. And that's the amount of adjustment I had to change just the position of that vent window, because I changed the door gap spacing with the front fender and the back quarter. Front fender, very adjustable. The alignment to the quarter being already in there, that really dictated that, and the rocker gaps. Anyway, okay, so that's in. Then you put this frame in that you had out, or maybe you already had it out, and you put that in. Those are the two top nuts, and then the bottom one is down here, and that rail is, you need to leave it loose and all the way to the rear of the car, so that then you can get in the glass. The glass tips in on the rail, locks in on the panel over here, and then I realized I jumped a step. Once the glass is in on those two rails, the bottom of the glass has this bracket, and you have already put this rail onto the two rollers that are on the regulator. One's here, the other one's hidden over here. And you bring the regulator with that rail on it to about this elevation, and actually to exactly that elevation, maybe a little higher. And what happens is there is a Phillips head machine screw that goes through the rail into the window frame, the metal at the bottom of the glass. And on the front of the glass, there's another rail. And this thing that my finger is on is what is attached to the glass. And there is another Phillips head screw. And while you're holding the glass from dropping, you take the regulator with that rail on it and snap it into this little kind of slot. And then, again, they don't mess around. All these holes are here for a reason. They're for adjustments. And here's the hole for that Phillips head screw. And this rectangular opening is for the other one. And you can, once the rear one has no adjustment in it, this one has an elongated slot on the rail. And so I put in the back one first, bring this one over, and raise up the window a little bit, and then tighten that. So that's a pretty vital step that I just glazed over. So I'm going to insert this little section into it, and then we're on to adjusting. You start adjusting. So I got all that in, and when I was happy with the way the window was operating, I had a massive overlap with the rear window quarter, and that caused me to pull the quarter opening back apart, and I had already sealed off the back seat, kind of going back to the original adjustments. And that's where it got real fun, because I was relieved to find out that there's an enormous amount of adjustment in the rear quarter, and that's where the day was saved, as it were. So let's get some light on this, and there we go. Is that good enough? Yes, that is good enough, kind of. So what we have is a light that's moving around. Let me get that positioned. Okay, so what we have on the rear quarter is, the way this window operates is it comes down and back all at the same time. It's kind of slick. I got to respect the design there. And I've got it where I've already set the stops for exactly where I want it. And again, the top dictates a lot, because you want the glass, see how nice and parallel that is to that arch? Right when it comes up, you want it to hit that rubber pretty evenly, and I have it like that. So I have it set where it digs into the rubber just a little bit to get a seal, but this to the door glass was overlapping and just not aligned. It was parallel, which was fortunate because this thing, you can twist it as well, but it was still just way out of whack. So I started poking around, and again, original witness marks came off of the table because I had adjusted the door so much for the gaps that I wanted that I just had to kind of start over with alignment on the glass. So with the handle removed, there is a bolt here and a bolt here that hold the regulator. And then down on the bottom, there is this guy. And those three allow a huge amount of tilt and elevation change so that you can get the angle you want. And then it also allows for a lateral front to back of the car adjustment. And it was quite a while of tweaking it because, I mean, it probably would have been really helpful if I'd had somebody on the outside of the car say, yeah, that's it, tighten it. But I just would make adjustments, tighten it, climb out of the car and go look and see where I was. So that was a lot of back and forth, but got it, and then locked down everything. And then I put my stops in so that the glass stops into the rubber and doesn't go too low either. That lower one is really important, I discovered on the last car, because when you operate the window and the window drops, if the window drops below the exterior and interior felts, it's going to really tangle up trying to come back out. So that's an important stop to get adjusted. So I'm all good. And then the door, when I got it all aligned and everything, I realized that I wanted a little bit more tilt on the back of the glass. The front of the glass that rides along the track of the vent window, I was real happy with that, but the back of the glass was flaring out just a little bit. And what there is in adjustment is this guy is the lower bolt for the roller rail for the window, and on the inside there is another nut that you can loosen and then change the tilt. So I was able to put a little bit more tilt on the glass going towards the roof and get the seal exactly where I wanted it. So I think I'm good. I pulled out the felts. Putting the felts in, I do not want to put those in pre-painting. And I looked at them, and I did not snap them all the way in, but I think I have the margins correct between the glass and the outer where the felt goes, and so I think I'll be good there. And that, I believe, is it. Oh, another adjustment point, which you may need on the quarters, is these two. When you're putting the glass back in, these guys are left loose, and what I found was, while those other two bolts that I showed you, plus the third on the bottom, allow a lot of position change and angle change, these guys allow for go closer to the body, come away from the body, which is really good because then you can line up with the door and get this gap relatively even. You want the felt touching the glass, not under huge pressure, but under some. But you don't want it, the body, isn't really adjustable, and so you want the glass to adjust to a consistent distance there, and I think I have that. Okay, so I don't expect a lot of people to get this unless you've gone through doors before, but if you need it, hopefully it helps. Oh yeah, the other thing is water drainage in old cars is all about just let the water come into the car and then leave the car, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. The water runs down the glass, goes into the felt, goes into the body, and then comes down. And what they do is they waterproof, or try to waterproof, the interior of the car. And there are, on the panels, there's these little tracks, if you will, and this is a 3M product, which is like a stick or rope caulking, and it's real gooey and releasable, and so that sits in that little trough. And what happens is I will put a heavy plastic across that. It comes down, and then there is a drain that sends it back into the body. So you put the plastic on, and then the bottom of the plastic goes into this slot. So what happens is if you get any moisture in that cavity, it won't wick into the car through the panel because of that plastic that's over there. I've actually seen that do a pretty good job where it keeps the moisture in there. And so as I've done various repairs on the quarters I definitely will prime off and seam seal anything I welded on the backside so that I have the best chance of keeping moisture from attacking the backside of those panels. So, okay, again, lots of information. Hopefully this works. This is a 68 Chevelle. It's very similar for a 69, and but I can't speak to exactly what. I mean, this is an A body, so it covers a whole lot of different GM 68s. But the idea is that they built in a ton of different adjustments, and what I highly recommend is, because our seals that we're able to put in now are just not the same as the original factory ones, and the original factory adjustment is just different, and plus the doors have seen body work and this and that, and maybe the gaps weren't great when the car was first put together. It's worth being able to adjust all this. So there you are. Hopefully this helps. Thanks for watching.